Appreciate everybody being here this evening. Hopefully it was a productive weekend for us, kind of culminating with the selections here today. Had the two picks there in the fourth round at the top, and then we, going in, had a little bit of a gap with the 3-6 and the 1 or 2 7s, whatever it was. So then really we made the trades before the draft even started. Let's say typically what happens there at the top of the fourth round, you usually get calls. So teams are looking to move up, teams are looking to trade up. Our thought process was we probably were going to pick at one spot and then move back to try to accumulate another pick there in the middle. So the trade with Vegas kind of afforded us the opportunity to do that, move down to 109, picked up the fifth, and it was really kind of repositioning some of the picks. And then with the Philly situation or the Philly pick, I mean, it was a pick for next year. I mean, Philly's a good team, so, I mean, it's a third, but, you know, it's probably going to be middle to the bottom, so it's called a fourth. But nonetheless, acquiring a future pick, like we thought it made sense. So we had X number of players there kind of at the top. We figured we'd get one of them. So we moved back, picked Dylan Horton, defensive end there from TCU. So good player. Just kind of played a couple different defensive systems. Probably best suited at defensive end. So probably be a defensive end in our front. Has good size, good length. Productive season. Had a pretty good Senior Bowl week. So again, their front, the way they play, they're kind of 3-3-5. So he's kind of played multiplicity of front, kind of in 4-eye, some inside. Really fits more on the edge of the defense, so kind of fits the profile of what we're trying to do here on the defensive end spot. So that was the pick at 10, whatever we make it, 109, whatever it was. And then kind of we're positioned there 174, and then just kind of scooted up a little bit there. Similar type of trade with, I want to say it was the Rams, right? Yeah. So it was repositioning. So Henry's a player. Wherever he's played, he's been productive. So whether it was at Tennessee, whether it was at Alabama, captain, leader, ran a defense, signal caller, highly productive, instinctive. So there's a lot of good qualities. Should have a role in the kicking game. So depth at linebacker, depth in the kicking game, good makeup. High-level makeup. I'd say kind of elite makeup, top of the line makeup. So I'd say him and Anderson, I don't want to say essentially ran a defense down there, but they pretty much ran a defense down there. So that was that. And then we had the 6 at 191, so it was kind of 2 for 1 there. So really at that point, you're probably looking at the same players. So it was kind of, all right, maybe we can pick up an extra pick or two and just kind of reposition it. And then as we were going, started looking up there, let's say Hutchinson was kind of a player that kind of stood out to us here a little bit. So here's a guy, Blinn, Iowa State, highly productive. Let me go back and look at his production. I would say it was, he had 100 catches last year or the year before, whatever it was. Good size, good toughness, really good with the ball in his hands, great practice player. Let's say this is a classic example of a guy, his workout didn't go great, but he's a good football player, so he kind of falls into that bucket. So it's a player that the offensive staff thought highly of. So as we were just repositioning at that point, we were just trying to see who are players that you have maybe decent grades on, that you have some affinity for. So, that's why we went ahead and made the pick with Hutch. And then the last pick there, I think it was the first 7th-round pick we've made in 3 years. So may everybody stick around for that one. But Brandon Hill, so safety out of Pitt, I would say fast, tough, explosive, urgent, 5'10", 195, ran 4.4. Kind of hell on wheels. The guy's got a really good playing style. So I would say when you talk about, explosive, competitive, tough, the things that we want to emphasize, the things that DeMeco wants to emphasize on defense, he sort of fits the profile. Probably a little bit better closer to the line of scrimmage, but, we'll get him here and kind of see maybe where he fits in some other spots. So I think we went into the weekend with 12, ended up picking 9. Lost a pick for, next year or two, lost 2 picks, picked up an extra pick. So, and really the 6th next year is really a 7th this year. So it's not, again, I think everybody loses their minds when you're giving up a lot to move up and get a player. We're talking about a 7th-round pick, so I don't think anybody should, read into much of that. So, again, if somebody wants to go look at the trade chart, be my guest. So work through undrafted free agent process here this evening. So we'll probably end up with about 85, 86 players-ish leave a few spots open. So could be some undrafted players or tryout types. Could be some free agents out there in the league that we had. So, I mean, we just kind of flipped the page. It's not like everybody's going to go on vacation here now. So, we got through the draft process. Hopefully it was a productive weekend. I mean, really can't say enough about the effort of everybody involved, from the coaching staff to the scouting staff, the constant communication, the constant dialogue, the constant what-if scenarios, and always just trying to be prepared for what the next step is, what the next move is, and then lose a player, go to the next player. Okay, what are the contingency plans in place? So just can't say enough about the overall group and the overall functionality in the draft room. So day 3 gets moving, I would say, a little bit quicker because you have less time. You go from 7 minutes, you go to 5 minutes, then you go to 4 minutes in the 7th round. So, but appreciative of everybody's effort, appreciative of the time and the commitment, and just the communication. So it's a team effort. It's about the Houston Texans getting better as a team. That's what the emphasis has been from the get-go, and we'll continue to do that. So rookie minicamp will be not the next weekend, but the following weekend. So it'll be the first opportunity for the players to get here. And then our current players will continue phase 2 of the off-season program here starting Monday. So we just keep moving forward. So, I mean, there's still a lot of work for us to do, but excited about the weekend, excited about adding some quality players to the team that we think can help us, and kind of go from there. So take some questions.
You and DeMeco are always talking about character. You drafted a bunch of captains. Is that important?
I think it speaks to who they are and what their teammates think of them. So it's not the reason you draft them, John, but obviously they're put in that position for a reason. And I would say captainship, as we know, it's different wherever you go. So maybe being a captain sometimes turns into a popularity contest, but when you're a captain, it's about leadership, and leadership is about action. So, but it speaks to, I would say, what their teammates think of them, what the coaches think of them, and just their overall presence and commitment. Now, they're not going to be captains when they walk in our building, but they're good teammates. They have the right mindset. They put the team first. So I wouldn't say that that's a sole criteria that we base the pick off of, but it's a part of the evaluation, just like a number of other factors are.
We'll go Christine and Brooks.
All these outside pundits grade everyone's draft classes, and I wondered, as someone in charge of this team, how would you grade your draft class, and were you able to accomplish all the things you set out to do this weekend?
I/TBD, incomplete / to be determined. I mean, that's the reality of it. So, I mean, there'll be, 50,000, draft grades here, tonight, tomorrow, what we did, what we didn't do. I mean, based on what? I mean, these players haven't done anything. So we just try to add players that we think can help our football team in some capacity. Now that they're here, they'll determine what their role is. So we can't get too caught up in that. I'm certainly not. I mean, honestly, I don't really care what the grades say, because it doesn't really affect anything that we do.
That's why I wondered what you thought, and if you were able to do all the things you wanted to do this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal every year and each step of the way is just add players that we think can have an opportunity to help us. So through that lens, I would say hopefully we've done that. So we'll find out more when they actually are here, and then when they actually kind of get started in our program.
How does your draft strategy change going forward when you don't have as many picks like you did this year with 8 trades? I mean, does it change at all, or do you kind of go into different ways of trying to acquire more?
As far as you're saying for
going forward with like looking at next year and other stocks going forward. I mean, next year you have fewer picks. I'm just curious if the strategy changes at all than where we all were this year.
say fewer picks right now, but there's a lot that can happen between now and next year. So trade a player, acquire an asset, get draft capital. So we're sitting and saying static, like nothing's going to change between now and April next year. Okay, I'd say it's highly unlikely. So it doesn't change anything. So we'll just look at our team, evaluate our team, look at opportunities. If there's an opportunity to add, great. What's the cost? If there's an opportunity to acquire a trade, or if the team is interested in a player, what's the cost associated with that? So I'd say there's a good chance, whatever picks we have now, whatever the number is on paper, that's probably going to be a different number by the time we draft next April or whatever it is.
DJ Johnson.
The Jacksonville Jaguars already had Trevor Lawrence, but the rest of the division in this draft drafted a quarterback that they perceive could be their franchise. Now, how much does that, affect how you guys approach in terms of building a roster, knowing that other teams in the division are also getting their start potential quarterbacks to go forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really worried about what anybody else is doing. So we're focused on our team, and we just try to add players to our team that we think can help us in some capacity. So, I mean, not to oversimplify it, but, I mean, that's the answer.
Jonathan there.
Do you have any particular positions that are going to want to target with undrafted free agents or maybe even in free agency?
No, I mean, same thought process. You might have room, certain positions, you may have more room than others. So probably take, I don't know, let's call it 15 offensive linemen to training camp. So I think we ended up with 10 or 11, after Patterson. Oh, actually, I skipped over him, so in the discussion. But I think we ended up with 11 offensive linemen. So we'll probably sign a few after the draft, maybe leave a few spots available. Most positions is kind of one or two players here or there. So, and then if you add beyond that, then it comes at the expense of another player. So, actually, while we're at Patterson, so I would say a lot of experience in Senior Bowl. He's played center, he's played guard, position versatility, good makeup. Pendergast will probably get excited because we drafted somebody from Notre Dame. So, but I would say he and Juice are kind of similar, but they're kind of different, right? So it kind of gives us a little bit of depth and maybe some versatility inside.
You see him as more of a guard or a center?
I mean, he's done both. I don't know wherever he's best at relative to whoever the other players are, like that's where he'll play. So like we talked about last night, when you have interior players on your team, some are guard only, some can play three positions, some are center only. So I would say in the case of Scruggs, center to guard, can potentially play all three. Patterson has played all three. He started at center, I want to say in 21 or whatever year it was, and then he started at guard. So he's done both. So essentially it says that he could play all three positions. So how does he fare relative to somebody else inside? Because then again, when you're taking 7, 8 offensive linemen to the game, the ability to do multiple is going to enhance that player's overall value.
Nick, when you look at the way Horton is, his evolution from playing other positions where he's further away from the ball, what do you think that helps him just to sort of see the field, your TCU defense man that you drafted?
Oh, Horton.
Just with him, kind of his evolution from standing up to now being in your point for a few years, do you think that helps his overall understanding of the game?
Maybe more from a spatial awareness more than anything else, but when you're off the ball, there's certain things that you're required to do. Look, I would say like him dropping into coverage isn't necessarily like a strength of his. Now, it's something that he's done. Does that help him relative to what we're going to ask him to do and teach him? Probably not. I'd say with a lot of players, not just Dylan, but what we're going to ask them to do may be a little bit different than what they've done previously in their system. So let's say we're going to probably be more of a 4-man front. So with 4 down linemen, probably play with his hand on the ground more than he would play from up or in a spatial alignment. Now, he's kind of been back to front. He was a safety, or whatever he was, and he kind of gradually moved towards the line of scrimmage. So, again, the viewpoint of the game, it's more about spatial awareness and spatial understanding, but then when you're playing defensive end, it's really specific. It's a little bit less space, less multiples, and then you're focused on the player that's in front of you. So how we're going to attack, how we're going to teach him to play the tackle, how we're going to teach him to play the tight end. Just because he's kind of played away from the ball, off the ball in space, whether or not that helps him or not, probably not, because it's just a different game on the line of scrimmage.
Just to follow up on Jonathan's question, is there a number of undrafteds that you like, just in terms of where your roster is, how shy of 90?
So I think with the draft, we ended up at, call it 76, 77, so that would leave kind of a dozen-ish or so spots, so probably get 10 or 11, so maybe leave a few spots for whomever. This way, if there's an opportunity out there, whether it's now, whether it's next weekend, or whether it's throughout the course of the spring that we feel we can fit, then you leave yourself some flexibility. So I likely won't go all the way to 90 today. Again, after the draft, actually, Dell, who counted, now actually goes off, so we theoretically can have 91 players because he's one extra. So we'll probably leave ourselves a little bit of flexibility here in the event there's an opportunity to add a player that we think can help.
We'll go Cody and then Sarge.
Hey Nick, when you first got here, you talked a lot about the process of getting this team back or even better than it was before. When you take a look at the talent that you added this year in the draft and last year in the draft, where would you say this team is in far as vision that you actually have for this franchise?
Yeah, it's not about my vision. I think it's really more about, like, where can we be as a football team? Where can we be as an organization? And are we moving forward, and are we making progress? I mean, not to oversimplify it, but that's really where the focus is. So it's not about vision. It's not about what I think, where we are. Do I think we're improving the football team? I mean, hopefully. So now we have to go out there and actually play good football. So that's going to come with time. Like, this is about work. The process hasn't ended. Just because we've had 2 drafts, like, the process hasn't ended. You know, we're going to continue to move forward. So, again, just try to take advantage of our opportunities that we have every step of the way, try to put a good team together, and then get 65, 70 players in the building on the team by September, and then give ourselves an opportunity to go out there and play good football on Sunday. So anything beyond that, I mean, I think is, kind of wasting time.
You added 2 wide receivers in the draft, plus you get Metchie back, who's essentially a rookie. How do you feel about the wide receivers group?
Yeah, I'd say they all kind of have some different things they bring to the table, including some of the players that we signed in for agency. So a pretty diverse group. There'll be an adjustment period probably for some, and then probably do some things offensively, some of the formationing. Some guys will be better at certain things relative to others. So, again, it's really about letting the players ultimately determine how they actually all fit together and what their roles are. They all have things that they do well. They all have things they bring to the table, and then we'll try to put those in a position where we can accentuate those things. So it's a pretty diverse group, a lot of different, I would say, body types and different types of skills. Some fast guys, some big guys, some kind of combo guys. So, however many we end up with on the team, call it 5 or 6-ish, and then probably a few extra on the practice squad as we go. So excited to work with the group. Probably add a guy or 2 here after the draft as well. So probably end up with about a dozen. I'd say that's a position where it's kind of like offensive line. Like, you have numbers until you don't have numbers. So inevitably lose a receiver or 2, so then you're out there in training camp with 8 or 9. So probably it's a high volume, high numerical position just in terms of having bodies, and then kind of let the competition sort of play itself out.
How's the last 3 days been spending with DeMeco Ryan?
It's been phenomenal. So just can't say enough, and I think I've said it all spring, just the opportunity to work with him, just his thought process, and just the communication is constant. It's ongoing. I think we philosophically believe in a lot of same things that are important. He's been awesome. I can't say enough good things about him. So, I think he's everything that we envisioned. It's probably everything that you all saw when he was here as a player. It's probably been the same. He's very consistent each day. He has a lot of good thoughts. His input is valuable and invaluable, and just looking forward to the opportunity to continue to work with him. So as we kind of transition to sort of football, I'm sure he'll be excited to go out there. And he's very hands-on. So we've been out there. We were out there the other day in our volunteer mini camp, and he spends a lot of time on the defense. So that's where his heart is. But has a good understanding of the overall team. Has a good understanding of the players. Let's say all the players that we drafted. He was a part of those discussions. So, can't say enough good things about just the opportunity to work with him.
Cool. Nick, you had brought this up kind of a second ago. You're with a few roster spots open just for flexibility. Last year, when you wrapped the draft, you had a Jarrett Hughes to come join the team. What are some things that you look for in free agents who are potentially going to be made available? And is it coming down to production, how they feel like the unit, or is it salary, cap structure, and salary?
All those things to factor in, I would say. So fit, role, value, cost, relative to what are the other options are that we have. The salary cap or what you have available is certainly a big part of it. Say a huge chunk to the rookie allocation will go to Will and CJ, so that's a big part of it. So we're in a decent spot. So just have to be pretty sound and fiscally responsible. So we have a certain amount of cap space, but I'd like to think we're going to go out there and spend a $10 million player. Probably not. I don't even know who those players are that are out there, but if there's a player in a role, it's a decent cost and it kind of matches up, and we can add it to the team. We'll certainly look at it and consider it.
We'll close with Kim, John, first. You're good. All right, John.
Kim, no questions. All right.
Can you give us an update on Metchie? And what are your hopes for him, knowing where he is right now?
Yeah, he's making progress, John. So he was a full participant last week when we got on the field for sort of phase 2, which is what we did. So still is a lot of, he hasn't played football in a long time, so kind of going from phase 2 and then really phase 3 when we actually start practicing football and some of the football, I would say, movements that are involved, space, defense, not that we're going to have contact. So nobody's worked harder over the last however many months to get himself to this point. So I wouldn't say anybody is surprised that he's arrived at this point. I'd say his will to work, his effort, his mental and physical toughness, and the work with the sports performance staff has been incredible. So there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit that have helped him to get to this point. You know, it has to start with John. So I'm going to say it's kind of inspiring, but to see somebody do that. But he's making progress. He's in a good spot. You know, haven't been any setbacks, but, you know, still a long road ahead of us, and he hasn't played a lot of football. But we're all certainly cautiously optimistic about where he's headed.
That's one thing. You mentioned last night you had a good relationship with Monty. Today, 3 trades with the Eagles. Obviously, you came to Houston with a lot of relationships, but in the 3 years you've been a general manager, how have you seen, learned about relationships with other people and getting on the phone?
Yeah, that's a good question, Brooks. I think you try to have an understanding philosophically about different organizational philosophies, a propensity to maybe move or consider a trade. I would say when you look at the trade, so we made a trade with Philly, and then Philly made the trade with Detroit as well for, you know, a 2050 4th-round pick or whatever it was for Swift. But some teams are, I would say, more willing to move and to be creative than others, and it's okay. It just depends whatever your philosophy, whatever floats your boat. So, and I think it's probably a two-way street. I think anybody that looks at our organization knows that, like, we're literally open for business, probably 24/7. So if there's a trade or something to consider, like, they're going to pick the phone up and call it because we're going to at least think about it. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, just have an understanding of kind of who's willing to move, what's their propensity to move, how often have they done it, are they less inclined. We actually look at this and study this before the draft. So we kind of do an overview of the decision makers in each organization. We kind of look at their trade history, their draft history, some of the things that they've done, maybe some of the trades that we've executed with them. We even go back to my time in New England, you know, dealing with certain teams. You kind of know who are those teams, and you kind of know some other teams are like they literally won't move or pick up the phone. It doesn't mean it's like right or wrong. It just means like that's what they believe in philosophically. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to, you know, be creative in different situations. And if it makes sense, you do it. If it doesn't, then you kind of keep it moving. So,
Thanks, Nick.
all right. Thank you all. Yep. Enjoy your weekend.